I was 78 years old on the morning I realized my grandson, Tyler, had robbed me blind. It was August 12th, 2022, hot, sticky Ohio summer, the kind where the air feels like old soup, and I was sitting at my tiny kitchen table in my ranch house outside Dayton, trying to make sense of a bank statement that looked like it belonged to somebody else. You ever have one of those moments where the numbers don't make sense, so you blink a couple times, clean your glasses, and try again? That was me. Except when I rubbed my thumb across the lenses, it didn't change a thing. I remember saying it out loud, even though no one else was in the room. Where the hell did $90,000 go? My voice sounded thin, like it belonged to an old man I didn't recognize. A faint buzzing came from the refrigerator, one of those tired, dying motors, and in that awful silence the sound felt like it filled the whole house. The house where I'd raised 2 kids, patched 1,000 holes in the drywall, watched Thanksgiving football for 40 years. And now I was sitting there alone at that kitchen table, staring at a number that should never have been possible. 90,412.76 gone, not missing, gone. At first I thought maybe it was some kind of banking error. Old folks get things wrong all the time, right? At least that's what people think. So I dialed the number on the back of my debit card, and you know how those automated menus go. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 88 if you're about to throw your phone through the wall. Eventually, I got a real human being, a young woman named Carly. "Sir," she said, tapping away at her keyboard, "the transfers were authorized." "Authorized by who?" I asked. She hesitated. I could hear her gathering words like someone preparing to break bad news. "Well, it shows a linked device, an iPhone, registered under your account." "I don't own an iPhone," I said. Another pause, longer this time. "Do you know a Tyler Jennings?" My stomach dropped so hard, I swear the chair shook beneath me. "He's my grandson," I said, and my tongue felt like wet sand. Carly lowered her voice. "It appears all the transfers were initiated from his device." There are moments in your life when you swear the world tilts. Not a metaphor. Your inner ear just gives up, and everything slides sideways. I sat there gripping the edge of that table so hard my knuckles looked like chalk. "Tyler, my daughter Emily's boy. The kid I used to take fishing out at Caesar Creek. The kid I bought a first car for. A rusty 4 Camry that smelled like spilled Gatorade but drove fine enough. The kid who used to call me Pops and bring me those cheap gas station donuts if he happened to be passing through town. That same kid had drained nearly my entire savings." I must have gone quiet because Carly said softly, "Sir, are you still with me?" "I'm here," I said, though it didn't feel true. "You'll want to come into your branch as soon as possible. They'll help you file a fraud report." Fraud. Hearing that word attached to your own family burns something deep inside you. After I hung up, I just sat there, staring at the wall clock, the same cheap plastic one I'd had since Mary passed, and listening to it tick. Each tick felt like it was chiseling away at something inside me. I'd been alone for 12 years, but I'd never felt lonely the way I did in that chair. I thought of Tyler's last visit just 3 weeks earlier. He came by wearing that gray hoodie he always wore, the one with the sleeves too long. He had tracked mud into the house, like he always did, and apologized with that crooked grin of his. "Sorry, Pops," he'd said, laughing. "Guess I'm still a mess." I'd laughed too. I didn't know he'd already cleaned out my future. I kept replaying everything he'd ever said to me those past few months. Those little "Hey Pops, what's your online banking password again?" Moments disguised as helping me set up my phone, or the times he'd grabbed my wallet just to make the deposit easier. You don't see betrayal coming from the people you love. Not head-on. It creeps up, soft as a cat, until it's sitting on your chest and you can't breathe. About an hour later, my daughter Emily called, and I almost didn't answer. But she left one of those long voicemails filled with worry, and I couldn't do that to her. "Dad, are you all right? Tyler said he tried calling but couldn't get through." I answered, my throat dry. "Emily, we need to talk." "What's going on?" "It's about Tyler." Silence. A mother knows when the wind shifts. What about him? She whispered. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I wasn't ready to break her heart yet. Tomorrow, I said. Come by tomorrow. You're worrying me, Dad. There was a crack in her voice that nearly snapped me in two. I know, I said quietly. I'm sorry. When we hung up, I felt something deep in my chest, something old, something I tried to bury with time and denial. It was anger, but not the loud, shouting kind. No, this anger was cold, heavy, the kind that settles into your bones. And in that silence, still sitting at the kitchen table, I whispered to myself, Boy, what have you done? I didn't know then how far I'd go. I didn't know how much of myself I'd lose, or how much of him I'd expose. But I knew this. I wasn't going to let a damn penny stay gone. Before everything cracked open, before I ever heard the name Carly from the bank, my life was steady. Not exciting, not glamorous, just steady. And at 78, steady felt like a blessing. I lived in the same tan ranch house in Kettering I'd bought with Mary in 1981. Vinyl siding, cracked driveway, mailbox that leaned just a hair too far to the left. Every morning I made the same instant coffee in the same chipped white mug, sat in the same recliner, and listened to WISO on low volume while my knees reminded me they'd survived a lifetime of concrete floors at Delco. My grandson Tyler had been a part of that steady life. Not a perfect part, not always an easy one, but a thread woven through everything since he was born in '99. I remember holding him in Miami Valley Hospital, tiny thing with red cheeks and a fist that wrapped around the tip of my finger like he was claiming me. Emily was only 24 then, scared out of her mind. I told her, You're gonna do fine, kiddo, and I'll help you every step of the way. She looked at me with relief, so deep it almost hurt to see. I kept that promise for both of them. Tyler spent half his childhood in my house. Before Mary passed in 2010, she used to bake him those soft peanut butter cookies he loved. He'd run around the living room with crumbs all over his shirt, laughing so hard he'd hiccup. After she died, it was quieter, sure, but Tyler kept coming. I think he knew I needed that. As he got older, things changed. Kids don't stay soft forever. Tyler hit high school and started drifting, nothing dramatic at first. Skipped homework, skipped curfew, skipped telling his mother where he was going. I'd talk to him sometimes. Hey bud, your mom's worried sick. A text wouldn't kill you. He'd nod, half listening, eyes glued to his phone. Yeah, Pops, I know, I got it. But he did got it. And by senior year, he was hanging with some kids I didn't like, boys who smelled like weed and trouble, wearing those puffy jackets even in June. Emily asked me once, Dad, do you think Tyler's using something? She looked so scared. I told her the truth. I don't know, but he's not the same boy who used to chase fireflies in my yard. Still, I kept trying to be there for him. When his beat-up Camry died in the major parking lot, I co-signed for a used Ford Focus. When he said he wanted to try community college, I put the first semester tuition on my own card. When he quit after 6 weeks, I didn't scold him. God knows life has enough brick walls without me adding another. Sometimes I wonder if that was my mistake, being too soft. But loving someone makes you blind in a way even cataracts can't match. Before the theft, our routine was simple. Tyler would swing by once or twice a week, usually around dinner time. I knew he came because he wanted something, food, a little gas money, or just a place to sit where no one was yelling at him, but I didn't mind the company. One night stands out to me now, though it didn't seem important then. Early July, heat thick as syrup. Tyler came in wearing that gray hoodie, hands stuffed deep in the pockets. Got any cold water, Pops? I grabbed him a bottle from the fridge. You doing all right? Yeah, he said, but he bounced his knee in that way nervous kids do. As he sat at my kitchen table, he watched me pull out my old Dell laptop, slow as molasses but still working. You know, he said casually, you really ought to let me clean that thing up for you, optimize it or whatever, probably got malware. Old people always get malware. He said it like a joke, but it stuck to my ribs in the wrong way. I chuckled anyway, what do I gotta do? He grinned, just gimme your login stuff and I'll take care of everything. I didn't think twice. I gave him access to my computer, my online banking, hell, my whole digital life. Back then, it felt like helping a kid get a leg up. What harm could come from someone you watched grow up? He stayed about an hour that day, clicking around, deleting things, muttering to himself. I made us grilled cheese sandwiches. He told me he had some big plans coming up, never said what. I chalked it up to typical 23-year-old bluster. When he left, he hugged me. "Love you, Pops," he said, patting my back. I felt the same pride I always felt when he said it. Funny, isn't it? You never know when a moment is the last honest one. Looking back, the signs were all there. Little things. The way he asked to double-check my bank app because the passwords confused me. The times he'd say, "These emails look weird, Pops, let me just delete some stuff." Or when he'd come by only for money and leave in a hurry, texting before he even hit the driveway. But I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up, they get busy, they get distant. I didn't know he was getting bold. There was one Sunday afternoon in late July, 2 weeks before everything collapsed, when Emily stopped by. We sat on the porch, drinking iced tea. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. "Dad," she said, "Tyler's not using me for money, right? He wouldn't take from you, would he?" I shook my head fast, too fast. "No, sweetheart, he's just a little lost right now. He'll find his footing." I believed that. God help me, I truly did. She sighed, leaning back in the old wicker chair. "I just want him to be the boy he used to be." I didn't have the heart to tell her boys rarely stay the boys they used to be. The truth is, my life before the theft wasn't perfect, but it was predictable. And predictability is oxygen to an old man. You get used to knowing your world won't tilt too far in one direction. But steadiness is a fragile thing. One wrong person with the wrong password can topple it in minutes. I didn't know it then, but the moment Tyler touched my laptop, the fuse had already been lit. And I was sitting on a powder keg wearing a blindfold, smiling like a fool. You know, looking back, the first crack didn't come from a bank statement or a phone call or even some strange transaction buried in a pile of numbers. No, the first crack came from something much simpler, something I dismissed in under 3 seconds, the way old men dismiss a creaky knee or a strange rattle under the hood. It was July 28th, just 2 weeks before I discovered the missing $90,412.76. A Thursday. I remember that because Thursdays were my grocery days, and I never broke that routine. Major on Stroop Road, 9:15 a.m. sharp. Same old lady at the flower stand who smelled like lavender and cigarettes. That morning I went to pay, slid my debit card into the little machine, and the cashier, a young guy with a ponytail, said, "Huh, that's weird. It says insufficient funds." I chuckled. That thing's wrong more than my knees. He laughed politely, ran it again. Same message. "You got another card, sir?" "Yeah," I said, waving him off. "Hold on." I pulled out my backup credit card, paid the $63.18 and didn't think much of it. Maybe a glitch. Maybe the magnetic strip was wearing out. Happens. But on the drive home, the more the sky pressed down on the windshield, the more something in my gut told me something wasn't right. Still, I brushed it off. That was the first crack. And I paved right over it. A few days later, Tyler came by. Sunday evening, golden light coming through the blinds, dust floating like little ghosts in the air. He walked in without knocking, he always did, and tossed his hoodie onto the recliner. "You all right, Pops?" he asked, heading straight for the fridge like he owned the place. "You sounded weird on the phone." "I'm fine," I said. "Car didn't work at Major the other day. Probably some stupid bank issue." Tyler froze, just for a second. Just long enough for something in his shoulders to tighten, then loosen again. Not something most people would notice. But when you've spent 23 years reading a boy's body language, when you've watched him lie about broken windows and skipped classes and forgotten assignments, you recognize tension like a scent. "Oh," he said, taking a bottle of water. "Yeah, banks are dumb, probably just flagged something." He didn't meet my eyes. And that right there, that tiny flicker in his expression, that was the second crack. I should have pressed him, should have trusted my instincts. But when you love someone, you talk yourself out of good judgment faster than you can tie your shoes. We sat down in the living room. He looked jittery, tapping his foot, glancing at his phone every 5 seconds. "Tyler," I said, "your mom says you've been stressed about money." He rolled his eyes. "She always thinks I'm stressed about something. She's worried. She's always worried." His phone buzzed. He looked at it too fast, just a quick glance but a guilty one. "Everything all right?" I asked. "Yeah, just my buddy," he said, but he angled the phone away from me. That was the third crack. He stayed only 20 minutes. Usually he hung around for dinner, but that night he said he had plans. When he hugged me goodbye, his hands trembled. Not much, just enough for me to feel it. "You sure you're good?" I asked, pulling back. "Yeah, Pops, I'm great, promise." The word promise hit the air like a lie wearing cheap cologne. A week later, August 4th, I got a call from Social Security. A routine check-in, nothing unusual. But at the end of the call, the woman on the line said, "Mr. Jennings, just confirming, did you recently change your primary email on file?" My chest tightened. "No, ma'am," I said slowly. "I haven't changed my email in 10 years. She paused. "It shows a new Gmail account was added last month." My stomach dropped. "What's the email?" "T. Jennings, Shopdesk 19 at." "That's not mine," I snapped. That was the fourth crack. The biggest one yet. I called Emily immediately. She picked up on the first ring. "Dad, everything okay?" "Emily," I said, my voice shaking in a way that made her inhale sharply, "did Tyler set up a new email for me?" She sighed. "Oh no, Dad, he said you asked him to. He told me you kept forgetting your old password." "I never asked for that," I said quietly. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Dad, what is he doing?" Neither of us had the courage to say it out loud. But the crack that finally made the whole structure lean came 3 days later. August 7th, hotter than hell. I was cleaning out the drawer where I keep warranties, receipts, old birthday cards Mary wrote. I found an envelope with my bank's logo on it. Inside was a letter, dated July 19th, confirming my new phone number had been successfully added to my account. Tyler's number. That was it. The fifth crack. The one too big to ignore. I sat down on the edge of the bed, letter in hand, feeling like the floor had tilted. I whispered to myself, "What have you done, boy?" The denial I'd been clinging to like some frayed rope finally snapped. I knew something was wrong. I knew it was him. I just didn't yet know how deep the knife went. And I sure as hell didn't know I was about to find out in the worst way possible. You ever feel your entire life collapse between one heartbeat and the next? Not slowly, not over weeks or months, but in an instant, like someone pulled the floorboards out from under you. That was me on the morning of August 12th, 2022, 9:42 a.m., standing inside the KeyBank branch on Wilmington Pike with my hands shaking so hard I had to keep them folded together just to look dignified. The air conditioning was blasting, but sweat still crawled down my spine. A young banker named Jeffrey Price, maybe 30, wedding ring, 2 polished shoes, sat across from me behind a cheap desk that pretended to be wood. He typed on his computer for a long time, too long, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. I watched that narrowing like a man watching storm clouds gather. "Mr. Jennings," he said finally, "we reviewed the transfers, all of them." My stomach dropped and he turned the monitor slightly, not all the way, just enough for me to see. A list of transactions scrolled down the screen like a death sentence. 7 transfers. June 3rd to August 1st. Total, $90,412.76. All to the same account. The name on the receiving account hit me like a fist. Tyler Jennings. I swear I felt something inside me snap, not break, snap, like a tight wire stretched too far. I leaned in, my voice rough. "Those weren't authorized." He swallowed. "Sir, the system shows biometric verification from a linked device, facial recognition." I blinked hard. I don't have a damn smartphone. I have a flip phone from Walmart. Jeffrey hesitated. Sir, someone accessed your online banking credentials. Someone with full permissions. Someone with full permissions. There it was. Cold clinical final. I stared at the screen. Each line was another betrayal. $14,800, June 3rd. $9,200, June 14th. $7,600, June 24th. $18,040, July 9th. $11,250, July 17th. $15,178, July 29th. $14,344.76, August 1st. Almost weekly. Like a paycheck, only I was the employer and I didn't know I was hiring. My throat tightened until it felt like breathing through a straw. I want to report fraud, I said. Jeffrey looked at me with sympathy. The kind that's half pity, half discomfort because people his age don't know what to do with the sight of an old man's life unraveling. We can open a claim, he said softly. But Mr. Jennings, when the perpetrator is a family member, things get complicated. I don't care, I said. I want it on record. He nodded and began typing again. That's when I felt it, this heavy, choking humiliation. There I was, 78 years old, sitting in a cold bank branch while a stranger typed out the details of my grandson, robbing me like I was some gullible fool on a bad TV commercial. You know what hit hardest? The realization that while I was watching reruns on TV and microwaving leftover meatloaf, Tyler was emptying the very savings I'd built over half a century of busted knuckles and graveyard shifts. But the shattering moment wasn't the numbers. It wasn't even seeing his name. It was what happened next. After the claim was filed, Jeffrey asked me to confirm recent account changes just to make sure nothing else was compromised. So he pulled up my profile. Primary email, T. Jennings Helpdesk 19. Secondary phone, Tyler's number. Device on file, iPhone 12 Pro Dayton OH. Authorized payee, Tyler Jennings. Authorized payee, I whispered. Jeffrey nodded. Yes, sir. Someone submitted the form digitally. My jaw tightened until my teeth ached. When? He clicked July 3rd. July 3rd. The same day Tyler had come over with that cheerful grin and asked, so casually, to help with my laptop. I felt sick. I sat back in the chair, staring past the banker, past the desk, past everything, straight into a memory I couldn't push away. My grandson, leaning over my shoulder, pretending to clean up my email inbox, laughing, joking, calling me Pops, his fingers dancing across the keys like a pianist. I heard his voice in my head. Don't worry, Pops, I'll handle everything. And by God, he did. I didn't cry in that bank. Old men like me, we save our crying for the quiet corners of our homes. But my hands trembled, bad enough that Jeffrey reached across the desk and placed a business card in front of me. This is the number for the County Financial Crimes Unit, he said. They specialize in elder exploitation cases. You don't have to call them, but you might want to. Elder exploitation. The word sat in my chest like wet cement. I nodded, unable to speak. As I stood up, he added, Mr. Jennings, I'm sorry. This happens more than you'd think. I didn't want pity. I wanted justice. I drove home in silence, no radio, no thoughts, just a low, buzzing numbness. When I parked in my driveway, I sat there with the engine off, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't recognize the man looking back. When I finally stepped inside the house, I saw something that made the final crack echo straight through my bones. My laptop, old, chunky, slow, sitting on the coffee table exactly where Tyler had left it. And suddenly, it wasn't a laptop anymore. It was a weapon he'd used against me while smiling in my face. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text message. From Tyler. Hey Pops, you good? Thinking about stopping by later. That was it. That was the moment everything inside me hardened. Not into rage. Rage burns too fast. This was colder. A slow, deliberate kind of wrath. The kind that grows roots. I stared at that message for a long, long time. Then I whispered, "Come by, boy, come right on by." Because now I knew exactly what he'd done. And I knew this was only the beginning. You ever hear that saying, "It's darkest before the dawn"? Well, whoever coined that never lived through the kind of dark I sank into after discovering what Tyler had done. Dawn didn't feel anywhere near me. Hell, I wasn't even sure the sun remembered where I lived. The days after August 12th blurred together the way old photographs fade, edges curling, colors bleeding, everything growing dim. I moved through my house like a ghost haunting my own life. Dishes piled up in the sink. The TV stayed off. My recliner sat empty. I'd wake up in the morning and stare at the ceiling, waiting for some miracle thought to tell me this was all a misunderstanding. It never came. Instead, I got the nightmare. August 13th. The day after the bank. The day Tyler came by. I almost didn't answer the door. I stood behind it, hand on the knob, breathing slow and shallow like an animal trying not to be found. But I forced myself to open it. He stood there in that hoodie, hood up despite the heat, hands jammed in the pockets. "Hey, Pops," he said, smiling that lazy, crooked smile. "Wanted to check on you." His eyes flicked over me, quick, calculating like a mechanic inspecting a busted engine. I felt it. I felt him assessing whether I knew. I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked past me, tracking dirt on the rug like always. I watched him head straight for the fridge, just like he always had, pulling out a bottle of water. "You look tired, Pops," he said. "Everything okay?" I swallowed a bitterness that tasted like rust. "I'm fine." "You sure?" he smirked. "You look stressed." Stressed? God, if he only knew. But here's the thing, this wasn't the moment I confronted him. I wasn't ready. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't prepared. Instead, I did what humiliated men have done for centuries. I pretended. He sat down on my couch, scrolling on his phone, tapping his foot in quick little bursts. Nervous energy or guilt, hard to tell. "Pops," he said suddenly without looking up, "you still have that bank app on your laptop. Didn't I fix that last time I was here?" I felt my pulse jump. He was testing me, poking the edges of his crime like a man checking whether a trap has been sprung. "Laptop's fine," I said. "I'm not messing with it much lately." "Good," he said, glancing up. "Wouldn't want you getting hacked or anything." Hacked? The word nearly made me laugh. And then he reached out, put a hand on my shoulder. "Love you, Pops." It should have meant something. Instead, it felt like a match held to gasoline. When he left 20 minutes later, he clapped my back and said, "If you need anything, you know I'm your guy." After the door closed, I sank onto the couch and pressed my palms into my eyes until everything went white. That's when the descent truly began. Over the next week, I stopped answering calls. Emily called every day, sometimes twice. "Dad, please pick up. Tyler said you've been weird." I'd just stare at the phone buzzing on the end table like it belonged to someone else. I didn't want to hear her defend him. I didn't want to hear myself accuse him. I didn't want to hear her heart break when she learned the truth. Whatever came next, I knew it wouldn't be clean. Families never break clean. Sleep barely visited me. And when it did, it brought nightmares. One night I dreamed I was standing in the aisle of a Walmart, my hands full of groceries, basic things, bread, eggs, milk. But every time I reached the checkout line, the cashier shook his head and said, "Insufficient funds." Behind me, Tyler laughed and laughed and laughed. I woke up drenched in sweat, panting like I'd run a marathon. During the day, small things triggered me, things that had never mattered before. The creak of the hardwood floor reminded me how old I was. The mailman knocking made my heart jump. Commercials about retirement security made me sick. And that damn laptop. I couldn't even look at it without feeling like a fool. One afternoon, I threw a towel over it just so I wouldn't have to see it sitting there like a weapon I hadn't known was pointed at me. The worst moment, though, came during a trip to the pharmacy. August 19th. 7 days after the truth. I went to refill my blood pressure medication. When the clerk rang it up, she said, "That'll be $87 today." I blinked. "Isn't that covered by Medicare Part D?" She looked confused. "It says your premium hasn't been paid for 2 months. I felt the floor tilt. 2 months. June and July. The exact months Tyler had been draining the account. Standing there under the harsh fluorescent lights, with a line of people behind me and some teenage kid bagging someone's candy bars, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Shame. Raw burning shame. An old man who couldn't even keep his own pills paid for. I left without the medication. That night Emily showed up unannounced. I heard her knocking, soft at first, then firmer. Dad, I know you're in there." I didn't move. "Dad, please talk to me." Still I sat on the couch, staring at the shadow under the door like it could swallow me whole. After a minute her voice cracked. "Is this about Tyler? He said you've been acting strange. Dad, please don't shut me out." When she finally left, her footsteps down the walkway sounded like accusations. I sank deeper after that. The days got heavier. My house felt smaller. My world felt colder. I barely ate. Everything I'd built, every shift I'd worked since 1963, every dollar I'd saved, every sacrifice I'd ever made, felt wasted. There's a special kind of despair reserved for old men who realize the world has left them behind. And yet, somewhere in that darkness, a tiny seed of something else began to grow. Not hope. Not yet. But awareness. Something was wrong with Tyler, more wrong than I understood. I kept hearing his foot tapping, seeing his shaky hands, remembering how he checked the door twice when he left that day, remembering how he kept glancing at his phone like he was waiting for something or someone. The more I replayed those moments, the more I realized. He wasn't just a thief. He wasn't just greedy. He was desperate. Something or someone was behind him. And that small discovery lit a spark in me. Because if there was one thing I had left, one thing age hadn't taken from me yet, it was this. I knew how to pay attention, I knew how to take notes, and I knew how to wait. The descent wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But somewhere in that darkness, the ground beneath me began to shift. And soon, I'd meet the person who'd help me turn that shift into a plan. If part 5 was the descent into darkness, then what happened next was the moment I stopped falling. Not because things got better, they didn't, not yet, but because someone finally reached down into that darkness and grabbed hold of me before I hit bottom. Her name was Rosa Alvarez, and she was the night shift nurse at the Kettering Health Clinic, where they dragged me after I damn near collapsed in Major's parking lot. Let me back up. August 23rd, 11 days after the bank. Hot enough to fry an egg on the blacktop, humidity thick as wet cotton. I'd gone to Major again, same place, same ritual, only this time I didn't make it past the cart corral. My vision blurred, the ground tilted, and suddenly the world sounded like it was underwater. I leaned on my cart trying to catch my breath, but everything kept spinning. One of the store employees, a young guy with tattoos creeping up his neck, rushed over. "Sir, you okay? You look real pale." Next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance. And that's how I met Rosa. She was the kind of woman who could tell a life story just by the way she looked at you. Big brown eyes that missed nothing. Black hair pulled into a bun so tight it probably required engineering tools. And a voice that could slice through panic like a warm knife. She took one look at my blood pressure reading and said, "Senor, you've been skipping your meds." It wasn't a question. She already knew. "I'll get them refilled," I muttered. "No," she said firmly. "You'll take them, big difference." Her tone reminded me of Mary when she'd catch me sneaking salt onto my dinner plate. After a few minutes of vitals and questions, she sat beside me on the exam bed. "What's going on with you?" she asked gently. I didn't answer. Easier to say nothing than try to explain the shame boiling in my gut. But Rosa wasn't the kind of person who walked away from silence. She waited and waited. Finally, she said, "You're not here because of blood pressure. That's just the symptom." I turned my head toward her. "You don't know me." She smiled a little. "I know men like you, men who carry pain like a backpack of bricks." Something cracked inside my chest. Not the same kind of crack as before. This one felt like a release. So I told her. Not everything. Not the whole 90 grand. Just enough. "My grandson took something from me," I said quietly. Her expression softened. "Money." I swallowed hard, all of it. She didn't gasp or start lecturing me or pity me. She just nodded, slow and sad. "That happens to a lot of older folks," she said. "Too many." "I trusted him," I whispered. "That's what makes it hurt," she replied. There was a long silence between us, heavy but not suffocating. Then she said something that shifted everything. "You're not stupid. You were betrayed. There's a difference." No one had said that to me before. Not Emily. Not Jeffrey at the bank. Not even myself. Rosa did. And that's when the gathering began. The gathering of information, of courage, of someone who believed me. After clearing me medically, she walked me to the lobby. Before I could leave, she slipped a small card into my shirt pocket. "Call this number," she said. "It's for an elder justice advocate. Her name's Margaret Chen. She's tough. She won't let anyone sweep this under the rug." I took the card but said nothing. "You think you're protecting your family by staying quiet," she added. "But you're not. You're protecting the one who hurt you." Her words hit like a hammer because they were true. I nodded once, "Thank you." She squeezed my forearm. "Don't let shame keep you sick, Mr. Jennings. Fight back. You have more power than you think." Then she walked away down the hallway, sneakers squeaking softly on the linoleum. That night back home, I sat at my kitchen table, same spot where this whole nightmare started, and stared at the business card. Margaret Chen, Montgomery County Elder Justice Initiative, Advocate/Case Coordinator. I kept turning it over in my hands, the edges going soft from my thumb, rubbing them over and over. I wasn't ready to call her. Not yet. But something had changed. Rosa had planted a seed. And seeds grow, even in the darkest corners. 3 days later, on August 26th, the next piece fell into place. I was taking out the trash when my neighbor, Zach Harper, walked over. Zach is 32, computer geek, works from home, pale as drywall and always wearing some t-shirt with a video game character on it. He lifted a hand. "Hey, Mr. J, haven't seen you around. Everything good?" I must have looked worse than I realized because his smile faded. "You okay?" he asked. I don't know what made me tell him. Maybe the exhaustion. Maybe the fact that he'd always helped me with tech stuff without making me feel dumb. "Someone stole from me," I said quietly. Zach frowned. "Scammers." "No," I said, "family." His eyebrows shot up. "Oh, damn." I rubbed my face. I don't know where to begin. He hesitated, then said, "If it was digital, I could maybe help you look at what happened. If you want." I stared at him. "You can do that?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, you'd be surprised what a laptop can tell you." My heart thumped. "You'd help?" "Of course," he said. "You were like the neighborhood grandpa when I was a kid." Funny how you can spend your whole life thinking you're alone, and yet people keep showing up when the world tries to take you apart. I told him everything. Not all the emotional stuff, just the facts. He listened without interrupting, jaw clenched the whole time. Then he said, "All right, I'll come by tomorrow and we're gonna dig." That night, something stirred in me. Something I'd been missing since the day Tyler took that first dollar. Direction. I wasn't just falling anymore. I was reaching. Reaching for allies. Reaching for answers. Reaching for whatever part of myself I thought I'd lost. The descent wasn't over, but now I had company in the pit. And together, we were going to claw our way back out. The next morning, August 27th, 9:12 a.m. I brewed the strongest pot of Folgers I'd made in years, the kind so bitter it could clear sinuses. I wasn't planning on sipping it like some cafe hipster. I needed the burn. I needed something to cut through the fog that had settled over me since the day I found out Tyler had been draining my life away. Zach showed up right on time, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, hair sticking up like he'd run a hand through it 100 times already. He gave me a half smile. "You ready, Mr. J?" "As I'll ever be," I said. He stepped inside and went straight for the living room like he'd rehearsed this on the walk over. I followed him, feeling like a man heading toward an execution chamber, but this time, maybe the execution wasn't mine. I sat in my recliner while he flicked on my old laptop. He winced when it made that loud grinding noise. "Jesus, this thing is older than me," he muttered. "Feels like it," I said. Then the screen lit up, and with it, the trap I'd unknowingly walked into 2 months earlier. Zach cracked his knuckles. "Okay, let's see what your grandson did." Hearing him say it out loud made my stomach twist. I didn't respond, just nodded. He opened the browser history first, then the saved passwords, then the authorization logs. His eyebrows shot up. "Mr. J, this isn't just stealing." I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "This is structured, planned. He wasn't just poking around, he set you up." He clicked through a series of screens, talking fast. "Look, June 3rd, that's when the secondary email was added. June 4th, he changed the password recovery options. June 14th, he added the new phone number. June 15th, he synced your account to his iPhone. See here, Apple keychain verification." He paused. This is bad." Hearing him say it, seeing the evidence right there illuminated by the flickering old screen, felt like being punched all over again. Zach kept digging. "You see these connections. Whoever did this logged into your bank at least 27 times from the same IP address." "What's an IP address?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Your grandson's home Wi-Fi, Mr. J, his apartment on Wilmington Avenue." I felt my throat tighten. Zach pressed on. "But here's the thing, he was sloppy, really sloppy. Look at this." He turned the laptop toward me, pointing at a file deep in the system logs. A screen recording. "Tyler recorded himself doing this," Zach said, "or his phone did automatically." I didn't want to watch. I had to watch. He clicked play. For the next 46 seconds, I watched a blurred reflection in the laptop screen, a figure in a gray hoodie access my bank account. I watched the cursor glide over my balance. I watched the transfer page open. I watched the amount typed in. $14,800. And then I heard it. A voice faint but his. "Come on faster, come on." "Tyler." "My grandson. The kid I taught how to bait a hook. The kid I carried on my shoulders at the county fair. The kid Mary once rocked to sleep on the porch swing. He left a digital footprint the size of Bigfoot," Zach said softly. "This isn't just bad, this is felony bad." But the real punch didn't land until after lunch. Zach stayed, eating one of the old microwave burritos I had in the freezer while I gnawed on a ham sandwich I barely tasted. Then he said, "There's more." More? That word always sounds harmless until you're living inside it. He showed me a spreadsheet Tyler had created, buried deep in a temporary files folder. It listed amounts, dates, notes. Next to the first withdrawal, pay Rico. Next to another, cover his threat. Another, rent plus fronted cash. And next to the biggest transfer, by time. "Who the hell is Rico?" I whispered. Zach shook his head. "Someone you don't want to owe money to." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just theft. This wasn't just greed. Tyler was in trouble. Deep, dark, dangerous trouble. Zach kept scrolling, then stopped at a line that made his face drain of color. Next to the last withdrawal, Tyler had written, "If Pops asks questions, play dumb." I closed my eyes. That was the day it hit me. Tyler hadn't stolen from me on impulse. He'd planned it, scheduled it, Tracked it. He'd lied to my face, not once but dozens of times. Zach closed the file. Mr. J, I don't know what your plan is, but whatever you do, don't confront him alone. I wasn't planning on it, I said. Not anymore. Good. He packed up, then paused at the door. If you want help with any of this, I'm in. I nodded, thank you, son. He smiled, embarrassed. You always called me that when I was a kid. Felt good to hear it again. After he left, I sat alone at the kitchen table with that evidence. Those files, those logs, those notes, feeling something shift inside me. Not the cold anger anymore. Not the humiliation. Not the sorrow. Something different. Purpose. Zach had given me the map. Rosa had given me the push. Now I needed someone who could pull the legal pin and make this whole thing explode in the right direction. So at 6:41 p.m. that evening, with the sky turning pink outside the window and my hands steadier than they'd been in weeks, I picked up my phone. I took out the business card. Margaret Chen, Elder Justice Advocate. Montgomery County. I dialed the number. It rang twice. A firm voice answered. Margaret speaking. I cleared my throat. Ma'am, my name is Arthur Jennings, and I need help. There was a pause, professional, measured. All right, Mr. Jennings, tell me everything. So I did. Every dollar. Every lie. Every file Zach uncovered. Every shattering second. When I finished, she breathed in slowly and said, Mr. Jennings, we can build a case. A strong one, but it's going to take strategy. What kind of strategy? I asked. The quiet kind, she replied. You're going to let Tyler think you're still confused, still weak, still in the dark. My heart thumped. And then, she continued, we're going to turn everything he did against him. I felt something spark to life inside me. A plan. A direction. Revenge, but the lawful, devastating kind. Margaret wasn't just an advocate. She was a general. And I was done being a victim. Margaret didn't waste time, not 1 second, not one breath. By August 28th, the morning after our first call, she was already sitting across from me at my kitchen table, a leather folder open in front of her, glasses perched low on her nose, looking at me like a sergeant sizing up a new recruit. She was maybe mid-50s, sharp jawline, dark hair streaked with silver, and an expression that said she'd spent her entire career fighting people who underestimated her. Not the soft, comforting type. The precise, surgical type. The type who sees through excuses the way X-rays see through bone. Mr. Jennings, she said, tapping the table lightly, you have more evidence than most people who come to me. Enough to build a case that will stick. But the way we use it, that matters. I nodded. I felt like I was about to sit for a final exam I hadn't studied for. She opened her folder. Inside were printed screenshots. Zach must have emailed her everything overnight, and a list she'd written by hand in neat block letters. Financial exploitation of an elder. Identity fraud. Unauthorized access to a digital account. Bank fraud. Theft over $75,000, felony level 1. I felt my chest tighten. He could go away for that long. She met my eyes. He could if we choose to push it. The we rattled through me. No one had stood with me like that in a long time. But, she continued, before we involve prosecutors, we need more. We need Tyler to incriminate himself more directly. I frowned. How? She leaned back, folded her arms. By letting him talk. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. You want me to meet with him? Yes, she said, and you're going to act confused, tired, forgetful, vulnerable. Exactly the man he thinks he can manipulate. I don't like lying, I muttered. You're not lying, she said calmly. You're surviving. She let that sink in. It hit deeper than I wanted to admit. Now, she added, before we go any further, I need to ask something difficult. I braced myself. Do you still love your grandson? I swallowed. Yeah, I said quietly, I do. Margaret nodded once. Then let's get justice before he destroys himself completely. Zach arrived around noon. He came in carrying a black pouch with wires sticking out of it. "Okay, Mr. J," he said, rubbing his hands together. "Time to gear up." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "You brought the recorder?" "Yep," he said, pulling out a tiny device smaller than a tic-tac box. "This thing could pick up a mouse whispering." I held it in my palm, surprised at the weight. "You sure this is legal?" I asked. Margaret nodded. "Ohio is a one-party consent state. As long as you know the recording is happening, it's admissible." That was the first time I felt something like power return to me. Not full strength, more like a dim bulb flickering back to life. "We're going to get what we need," she said, "but we need Tyler to come here willingly." I pulled out my phone. He'd texted the night before. "Hey, Pop's checking in, you good?" I typed slowly, deliberately. "Can you stop by today? Having trouble with my computer again." He replied in less than a minute. "Yeah, sure, after 3. Margaret and Zach exchanged a look. Margaret closed her folder. "That gives us 3 hours, she said. "Let's prepare." The next stretch of time moved strangely, fast and slow at once. First, Margaret coached me. "You're going to play confused," she said. "A little lost, but not too much. Let him think the situation is slipping out of your control." "And if he gets suspicious?" I asked. Zach chimed in. "He won't, trust me. Guys like this, they get cocky once they think they've gotten away with something." I nodded, though my stomach churned. "Remember," Margaret said, "our goal isn't confrontation, it's confirmation." I repeated that back to her. Then again. And again. She made me practice specific lines. "I got a weird letter from the bank. They said something changed on my account. You sure everything's okay? Maybe you can look at it for me." Zach set the recorder inside my shirt pocket, right under the flap. "It'll pick up everything," he said. I felt myself sweating, my hands shook. "What if he figures it out?" Zach put a hand on my shoulder. "He won't, because you're going to be the same grandpa he thinks he can fool." He meant it as reassurance, but it stung anyway. 2:58 p.m. My heart thudded like a drumline. 3:07 p.m. The sound of a car pulling up. 3:10 p.m. A single knock on the door. Margaret and Zach slipped into the spare bedroom. Door cracked open just an inch, just enough for Margaret to hear, just enough for Zach to monitor the audio on his laptop. I took a breath, then another, and opened the door. There he was. Tyler, my grandson. Hoodie up, eyes darting, jaw tight. "Hey, Pops," he said, forcing a smile. "Everything okay?" I stepped aside. "Come in, bud." He brushed past me, the same way he always had, like my home was a hallway he walked through, not a place built out of my life. My heart squeezed, but I didn't show it. I played the part. I pointed to the laptop on the coffee table. "Think something's wrong again. Got this letter, and the bank lady said something weird." "Oh," he said too casually. "Like what?" I shrugged. "Something about changes to my account. You know I don't understand that stuff." He hesitated, just a slight twitch in his neck. Then he sat down. Yeah, I can look," he said. "I'll fix it." My pulse hammered. He opened the laptop. He typed fast, too fast, like he'd been using my login for months. Because he had. He didn't know I was watching. Really watching. He also didn't know the recorder in my pocket was capturing every keystroke sound, every breath, every slip. After a moment, Tyler said, "Looks like everything's fine, probably just a glitch." I swallowed, played my line. "But the bank said someone changed my phone number. That wasn't me." He froze. Just a single heartbeat. "But I felt it. Saw it." His voice came out thin. "Well, maybe you forgot you did it." I shook my head slowly. "No, I don't think so." A tremor hit the corner of his mouth. "Pops," he said, forcing a laugh, "you've been forgetting stuff lately. It happens." He was trying to gaslight me. And the recorder caught every word. I leaned forward. Tyler, is there something you want to tell me? His eyes flicked to the door, brief, nervous, instinctive. No, he said quickly. Everything's fine. I'm helping you like always. You trust me, right? There it was. Right on the recorder. I let the silence stretch, just as Margaret instructed. Tyler's leg bounced. He cracked his knuckles. He looked around like the walls might close in. Then he said it. Pops, don't go talking to anyone about your accounts, okay? You'll just confuse things. Let me handle it. My chest tightened. But I stayed in character. You sure there's nothing going on? I whispered. He exhaled sharply. Annoyed. Cornered. Then, under his breath, he muttered. Jesus, Pops, I'm already dealing with enough because of that money. Every nerve in my body lit up. There it was. The slip we needed. The admission. The crack in his own armor. I opened my mouth to respond. But I didn't have to. Because in that exact moment, Tyler's phone buzzed. He looked down. His face went white. He stood up suddenly. I gotta go, he said. We'll finish this later. He bolted for the door before I could stop him. The door slammed. His car peeled out of the driveway. And inside the spare bedroom, Margaret whispered. We got him. Everything was in motion now. And soon, this thing Tyler thought he'd buried was going to blow wide open, right in public, right in front of the people he'd lied to, hurt, manipulated, and used. The trap had been set. And the next step wouldn't be quiet. It would be explosive. The unraveling didn't happen all at once. It came apart stitch by stitch, lie by lie, the way a cheap sweater dissolves when you pull one loose thread. By the time anyone noticed the unraveling, it was too late. The whole thing had already turned to string in Tyler's hands. And I'll admit something to you, because I promised I'd tell this story straight. Part of me still hoped he'd stop it himself. Part of me still hoped he'd walk through my door, knees shaking, eyes red, and say, Pops, I messed up. Help me. But he didn't. Instead, he did what cowards do. He ran. August 29th. The morning after the recording. I woke up with a knot in my stomach the size of a fist. I hadn't slept much. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw Tyler's face going pale when he got that text, like the whole world had grabbed him by the throat. I had one voicemail from him when I checked my phone. Hey Pops, sorry I left so quick. Something came up. I'll stop by later. Don't worry about that bank stuff, okay? Everything's fine. Everything's fine. The favorite lie of the guilty. Margaret arrived around 10:15 a.m., her binder thicker now, pages tabbed with colored post-its that looked like a war plan. Zach came too, laptop under his arm, face tight with tension. We sat around the kitchen table, the same table Tyler had eaten at since he was old enough to hold a spoon, and Margaret began. We're ready, she said. The recording captures clear acknowledgement. He referenced the money. He discouraged you from speaking to others. He admitted handling your accounts. Zach nodded. And we have the IP logs, screen capture, system changes, authorization requests. It's airtight. I swallowed hard. Now what? Margaret straightened her glasses. Now we take this to the county prosecutor. My stomach lurched. My hands shook. That's the moment I realized something painful and deeply human. You can want justice and still fear what justice looks like when it's your own blood under its weight. The meeting at the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office was set for August 30th at 2:00 p.m. Margaret drove me there, her car neat as her handwriting, air freshener smelling faintly of pine. Walking into that building felt like walking into a cold wind. The prosecutor assigned to elder cases was David Harmon, mid-40s, tall, thinning hair, tie slightly crooked. He had the look of a man who had seen too many families break themselves. He took our statements, listened carefully, played back parts of the recording, reviewed Zach's digital evidence. He didn't say much until the end. "This is a strong case," he said finally, "one of the strongest I've seen." I waited for the relief to hit me, but instead my chest tightened. "What happens to him if this goes forward?" I asked. Harmon tapped a pen on the table. "Given the amount, and given the vulnerability of the victim, this could be a level 1 felony, prison time, years." My throat felt thick. "Years," I repeated quietly. Margaret put a hand on my shoulder. "You're saving him from worse down the road." Maybe so. But in that moment, it didn't feel like saving. That night, I drank the first beer I'd had in nearly a decade. Just sat at my kitchen table with the bottle sweating in my hand, staring at the chair across from me, imagining Tyler sitting there, asking for money, asking for help, smiling that crooked grin, smelling like fast food and cheap cologne. I whispered to the empty room, "Why, boy, why'd you do it?" I don't know if God hears prayers like that. I don't know if he should. The next day, the unraveling finally exploded. I got a call from Emily around 4:30 p.m. Her voice was shaking, breath short. "Dad, where's Tyler? Have you talked to him?" "No," I said softly. "Why?" She swallowed hard. "He's missing." My heart hammered. "What do you mean missing?" "He didn't come home last night. His phone's off. His car is gone. Some guy named Rico came to the house looking for him. Dad, who is that? What's going on?" Rico. The name from the spreadsheet. The shadow behind the theft. I felt cold from the inside out. Emily wasn't done. He was pounding on the door, yelling Tyler owed him money. "Dad, what did Tyler do?" I couldn't tell her. "Not yet. Not like that." "Emily," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "listen to me. Lock the doors, don't answer to anyone. I'm coming over." "No," she said sharply, "not until you tell me what's going on." I closed my eyes. This was the moment. The moment the truth stopped being mine alone. "Emily." My voice cracked. "He took money from me." The silence on the other end was electric. "How much?" she whispered. "Everything," I said. 90,000. A ragged breath came through the phone. "Dad, oh my God, oh my God." I could hear her crying, soft at first, then harder, the kind of crying a mother does when she realizes her child isn't who she thought he was. "Emily," I said, "I'm sorry." But she wasn't listening anymore. She hung up. And that was the moment I knew the unraveling wasn't just happening to him. It was happening to all of us. That evening, Margaret called. "Arthur," she said, she only used my first name when things were serious. "We have a problem." My chest tightened. "What?" "Someone, likely this Rico, broke into Tyler's apartment this afternoon. Police responded. They're now looking for Tyler as a missing person." I closed my eyes slowly. "He might be in danger," she added. Danger. The word felt too small. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat. Didn't turn on the TV. I sat in my living room with all the lights off, listening to the house creak, thinking about the boy Tyler used to be, the boy who ran through my backyard barefoot, the boy who called me Pops, the boy who tried to whistle like me but couldn't. At 2:14 a.m. my phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. "You're next." No signature. No details. Just those 2 words. And I knew beyond any doubt the unraveling wasn't done. It was just getting started. I didn't call the police when that message came in. I didn't panic. Didn't pack a bag. Didn't even lock the doors, though maybe I should have. Instead, I sat there in the dark of my living room, phone glowing in my hand, those 2 words burning into me. You're next. Funny thing about being 78. You stop fearing the things that used to terrify you. You start fearing the right things: loneliness, betrayal, running out of time, running out of breath in the night. But physical danger. Men like me lived through the Vietnam letters arriving for our friends, layoffs that gutted whole towns, recessions that stripped everything but our dignity. A threat from some street tough named Rico didn't scare me the way he expected. Still, I wasn't stupid. I called Margaret. She answered on the first ring. Arthur, what is it? I got a message. I read it to her. There was a long silence. Pack a bag, she said. You're staying at my sister's tonight, and I'm calling Detective Rourke. I wanted to argue, but exhaustion made the decision for me. I gathered my things, a pair of jeans, a couple shirts, my toothbrush, and the Timex Mary gave me the Christmas before she died. Everything else felt temporary. Margaret's sister lived in Centerville in a small condo overlooking a patch of woods. I slept on the couch while Margaret paced the kitchen, on the phone with detectives, investigators, and, God help me, the prosecutor. At some point, I drifted off. When I woke, dawn was just barely showing, a pale, watery light coming through the blinds. Margaret sat across from me in a kitchen chair, arms crossed. They found him, she said. My heart slammed against my ribs. Tyler, I whispered. She nodded. Alive. The air left my lungs in a rush. But he's in bad shape, she added gently. Hospital in downtown Dayton. Concussion, dehydration, bruised ribs. Looks like he tried to run but didn't get far before someone caught him. I closed my eyes, my throat tightening. Rico. We don't know yet, she said, but the police are questioning him as soon as he's stable. Can I see him? She hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. Arthur, this is complicated. I'm his grandfather, I said. That's not complicated. It is, she said softly, because you're also the victim. I saw him anyway. Not that day, not the next, but on September 2nd, once the detectives cleared it. Miami Valley Hospital, room 308. He looked small in that bed. Not the cocky, hoodie-wearing 23-year-old who strutted through my house like he owned the place. Just a scared kid with a bruised face and an IV in his arm. He stared at the ceiling until I stepped in. Then his eyes widened. Pops. His voice cracked. I didn't think you'd come. I swallowed hard. Sit up, boy. He did, wincing. I moved to the chair beside him. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, he whispered, I'm sorry. 2 words. Too small for what he took. Too heavy for what he'd done. I never meant to, he stopped, scrubbing his hand over his face. I just needed to buy time. Rico, he threatened me. He said he'd hurt Mom, said he knew where we lived. I panicked. And you were the only person I thought. His voice broke. I'm sorry, Pops. I'm so damn sorry. I felt something crumble in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but something raw and painful and human. I would have helped you, I said quietly. All you had to do was ask. He nodded, tears streaming. I know, that's why I couldn't. I couldn't look you in the eye and admit how bad I'd messed up. We sat there, 2 broken parts of the same family, both grieving something different. Then he whispered, Are you pressing charges? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was tangled. Margaret and the prosecutor wanted the full weight of the law. Emily wanted her son to live long enough to learn from this. And me. I wanted something I couldn't even name. Tyler, I said, voice steady, you're going to take responsibility. You're going to pay back every dollar. You're going to go through treatment, counseling, whatever the court orders, and you're going to rebuild what you broke. He closed his eyes. Okay. And you're going to tell the prosecutor the truth about Rico. I already did, he whispered. Good. But I'm not putting you in prison for a decade, I finished softly. I'm not burying you alive. I'm old, but I'm not cruel. His chin trembled. Why? Because you're still my grandson, I said, and because punishment is different than revenge. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Thank you, Pops. I didn't say you're welcome. Some things shouldn't be cheapened with words. The next few weeks were a blur of court hearings, statements, negotiations. Rico was arrested, caught trying to cross into Indiana with stolen property from 3 different kids he'd squeezed. He flipped on his own crew in less than a day. Tyler took a plea deal. 3 years supervised probation, mandatory addiction and financial counseling, 2,000 hours community service, wage garnishment until every dollar was repaid. He avoided prison, but not accountability. And me. My money didn't come back overnight. Not all of it will, probably. But some did. Enough to keep me steady. The judge asked if I wanted a restraining order. I said no. But I did tell Tyler this. You don't come back to my house until you can look me in the eye without flinching. That might take months, maybe years. That's up to you. He nodded through tears. Someday, he whispered, I hope you'll let me earn your trust again. Someday, I said, not today. So here I am now. Back at my kitchen table. Coffee in hand. Laptop humming softly. The house feels quieter these days, but not empty. More like it's resting after a long storm. I see Tyler twice a month now, always in public places. A diner, a park bench, a community center office after his counseling sessions. He's different, smaller in some ways, bigger in others. He asks me how I am every time. And I tell him the truth. I'm healing slow but healing. He nods every time, eyes shining with something that looks a lot like hope. Do I forgive him? Not fully. Not yet. Do I still love him? More than I should. More than he deserves. More than he knows. But love isn't a shield. It's a mirror. And when someone you love breaks it, you spend a long time trying not to cut yourself on the pieces. Justice came. Not perfect. Not clean. But real. And revenge. Revenge was simply this. Making sure he had to face what he'd done and live with it. Every day. Every dollar. Every consequence. In the end, maybe that's the only kind of revenge a grandfather like me can live with. And maybe that's enough.